Content creators are consuming in excess because they want to. This is how you are choosing to make money and have influence in the world. This is a choice. If you've spent almost any amount of time on YouTube, you'll know that one of the staple pieces of content for consumable communities is the declutter. This isn't just a beauty community thing, like I once thought long ago, but it's staple content. It's well-performing content for so many communities. Sometimes these videos are called destashing or unhauls, but it's still a declutter. There is an audience and an interest in these kinds of videos. I might even say a voracious interest. And this interest plays a role, even if it's just a small role that encourages creators to continue to produce this kind of content. Today's video is all about the buy and declutter cycle, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes, however long this video is, talking about why I think it's a problem and why it happens. So let's start with the basics. Why do declutter videos exist at all? In general, when someone declutters, it's typically for one of two main reasons. Somebody has too much stuff, or somebody has unused stuff. These can overlap or be separate. You can declutter because you're not using stuff, or because your bins, baskets, bookshelves, or drawers are so full or stuffed it's overwhelming. Sometimes something has served a purpose or just didn't work out. Having unused stuff isn't inherently a sign that your stuff ownership is out of control, although it can be. Today, we're talking about the declutter video and ultimately content creators. Because I can observe their collections, and you can observe some of their online habits, some statements are fairer to make here than it would be of people who have I don't know anything about your stationery collection or your makeup collection. So we can see with our own two eyes that we're not talking about people who have a small, really considered or curated collection of stuff, or somebody who's used a product to the best of their ability. What happens most of the time with creators is that they've accumulated so much stuff that it's also impossible to use it all. My main thesis for this video comes from a 2022 article because I initially wrote something very similar. I read this article and I was like, yeah, these guys said it better. So a 2022 article from Monster, Iran, and Munch, they articulate that decluttering is only present in consumer societies and it's a way to facilitate consumption. That is the thesis of this video. And while we might acknowledge it on some level, or you might say, yeah, I think that's true, we're going to talk about why. We're going to go into those details. And I think it's helpful to do this kind of deeper dive so we can understand how we might be influenced by these videos. And also potentially deciding whether you want to support creators who do declutters or what kind of declutters you want to watch. Overconsumption is out of control. We're already at that point in time, that space in time. Sure, not everybody consumes equally, but when we look at content creators, generally speaking, and in these consumer or consumable niches, it's at insane levels. We're not at a place where it's kind of a problem. We're at a place where it is a problem. And overconsumption applies here way more than terms like over shopping or overspending, because spending money isn't always at the heart of it. Sometimes it's PR. Actually, a lot of the times it's PR or sponsored content, like sponsored products, sorry. You see the hauls and you see the trying and testing new products, or you just see outfit videos or planner spreads, and somebody hasn't necessarily said oh, I bought this stuff, but it's just new stuff being showcased all the time, keeping up on the new releases and showing the new products. I've been watching a lot of small creators, and by small I mean under 100,000, usually under 80,000, and a lot of this stuff is not malicious. And in certain communities there are supports for small brands. In the planner community, one thing I've noticed a lot are supporting creators who've opened up their own shops, who have their own sticker shops and stationery shops. And so you have creators who are buying from other creators, which is beautiful and wonderful. But A creator isn't just producing content for themselves. The only way we're able to consume at such proportions is through decluttering. Otherwise, it becomes and feels like hoarding. And in some cases, it can look like that. But often that's not the case. People don't want to hoard stuff, and people aren't hoarding stuff. Decluttering is such a normal part of life. It's as normal as like the act of cleaning your house. And it's something that people don't blink an eye at, or they don't think about it because it's natural and normal. And that's always something I consider when I think of something as normal. When something is normal, it often becomes invisible. And so we don't look at the power dynamics at play, or we don't look at, maybe power is not always the right word, but we don't look at the other dynamics at play either. And decluttering is something that is so normal that we accept as part of our everyday lives, something that we accept as like okay and fine, and something we don't blink it like bat an eye at. And this is not just true of content creators, but it's true of general viewers. Sure, I don't know how much you declutter, or like to what extent or what areas of your lives you declutter, but I do know that it has seeped into viewership where we view decluttering as really regular as well. In that 2022 article, the authors say that the biggest risk for decluttering, even the well-intentioned, is the relapse and refilling the space. This doesn't happen all of the time. There are plenty of people who I know who have gone down the minimalist road. I was actually watching somebody's stories today who talked about how like the big declutter like transformed their lives. Like they did one massive declutter and then they didn't want to consume stuff after. That does happen for some people. And this person felt like, isn't it true when you have the big declutter, you don't want to consume stuff anymore? And they were extrapolating that other people have the same experience that you do. And maybe that's true in certain circles, but I think it's equally not true in other circles. One of the ways that people justify decluttering, both content creators and the everyday person, is this idea of self-care. I would agree that decluttering can be an act of self-care. Is an act of self-care if your physical environment is causing you some level of stress and anxiety. You know, your home is cluttered or a specific space is cluttered. You can't open drawers. You can't open a closet. You can't open cabinets without stuff falling out. Or you can't physically close a drawer. Maybe you don't go in specific parts of your home, even if it's just a drawer, because it's so full. You can't find stuff. And you don't open the drawer because you know you can't close it. And then you don't open it, you don't use it, you forget about stuff. It comes this like mounting anxiety. Maybe you can't store things properly because you just don't have enough space. I can truly understand how an overfilled, overstuffed space can be stressful or anxiety-inducing. It can be a stress release or even an emotional release to decide that you want to declutter a space, and you can feel that emotional release before you go and do it. Like just making that choice, you can get some of that positive effect. And then it can be really empowering to say, I'm going to like take charge. I'm going to do this thing today. The act of decluttering can be satisfying for these reasons, but also so can watching somebody declutter, watching somebody transform their space and take ownership of their stuff or take action on something that they've described as a problem can be satisfying. It can also evoke a sense of relief or emotional release in both cases as well, watching or doing the decluttering. It can really be therapeutic to watch somebody do something like that with their life. Seeing a visual transformation of your own space or somebody else's is very satisfying. It can be calming because you're bringing order to a space. And it's this feeling of ease and calm that can make somebody feel like they've done a good thing. Like, yes, I feel calm, I feel relaxed, I feel relief, I've done something good and beneficial to myself. And on some level, sure. Even if you have that emotional release, you have that relief feeling, there's still the problem of consumption. Good that you feel better, but are you going to be in the exact same position 6 months from now? In content creators, we see time and time again that their satisfaction is short-lived. Their stuff is inevitably refilled again in a few months or few weeks even, and then they're back at the same thing. And this has become the cycle. Decluttering is cyclical when it fuels overconsumption, when it fuels buying stuff. The problem with decluttering in itself, like the act of decluttering when it happens, is that there is generally a lack of critical thinking. And you might say, well, Shauna, I don't think that's true. I'm going to disagree with that. Decluttering is a problem, like we've already talked about, because of overconsumption. We're buying things in problematic ways all on their own. We're buying too much of stuff, or we're buying stuff without critical thought, or we're bringing in stuff without critical thought, right? Like an influencer, they have the choice to accept PR or not. Like you don't simply have to accept PR. Like that is a choice for the most part. And when it comes to the non-creator, you have nearly complete control over how you bring stuff into your life. So there are problematic choices shaping the stuff that's brought in. But then when it comes to the act of decluttering itself, there is overall a lack of critical thinking, in my opinion. People usually don't use decluttering as a tool to learn about behavior to make better choices. I think people fool themselves into thinking that they are doing this when they aren't. By not learning and by not critically thinking, you continue purchasing in similar ways. So let me give you an example. Let's talk about a really common reason for why somebody declutters something. And that's somebody who doesn't use a thing anymore, right? Like somebody, planners, stickers, art, fashion, beauty. I don't use this thing anymore. This alone is enough for many people to say, declutter. But often, the reason why you don't use something anymore is because you're bored, or you have an inaccurate understanding of your own preferences. Those art supplies you don't use anymore. Do you not use them because they aren't new to you anymore and you are so used to buying new things that you only really focus on the new to you stuff? Is it because they're not aesthetic to you anymore? Is it because you're bored? Is it because you went through a gouache phase? You bought them perhaps a tad impulsively or excitedly because you were super into gouache, and that was a short-lived moment, and now you are no longer into gouache, but you're into pastels, or you're somebody who regularly draws with like pencil and markers, and you're back to your regular game? Is it because you only use and value your newest stuff when you don't know how to appreciate stuff when it's not new anymore? There's a lot of this community is into makeup, and it's kind of like a similar makeup thing would be like you're super into cream blushes, so you buy 10 cream blushes. 2 years later, you've used up none of those cream blushes and you've bought other makeup in the meantime, and now you're no longer into cream blushes. So not only did you buy more than you could use, but you are now bored of what you have because you're not into cream blushes anymore. That's kind of like the preference thing. What I'm trying to say here is that there are a lot of reasons why we get bored of our stuff, and it's usually because we don't understand some part of how we use stuff, and also appreciating stuff past its prime. Those two factors contribute a lot to why things get decluttered or why things stay. When we overconsume, we're not used to holding on to stuff past its prime, and it's also very common to buy multiples of things when we're excited about them. Saying you don't use or like something anymore is a bit of a cop-out because it's really surface level. And it's a surface level answer that is kind of an answer that like placates our mind to be like, yes, I have a reasonable and rational reason for why this thing is to be decluttered. And then you feel good about that choice because you feel like you have a legitimate reason to get rid of something. This doesn't facilitate learning. It doesn't facilitate learning something to do better or differently next time. And I wouldn't really have a problem if you decluttered something because it didn't work out and you knew why it was a problem. And you're like, yeah, I've learned some real information to use next time. That's not the problem. The problem is behavior that enables us to keep purchasing at high rates and high volumes. And this lack of understanding, this lack of critical thinking is one of those components at play. And most of the time when people are decluttering, whether that's a creator or even yourself, when you have too much stuff, there really isn't attempts for somebody to understand their purchases. The goal is to get rid of stuff, not to understand stuff. And you can go and click on any declutter. Go do it. And you'll see evidence of this. Somebody will be like, they'll have their eyeshadow palettes and they'll be like, I don't wear this anymore, declutter. I don't like this anymore, declutter. Sometimes you'll hear like, oh, this formula isn't good, declutter. What did you learn? What did you learn? Nothing. You decided that what you're bored of. It's really like, what am I bored of now? That's like kind of what these declutters are. It's blind removal of stuff. And this helps us get rid of stuff to buy more stuff. Munster Arendt and Munch talk about how decluttering can be beneficial when it's a reflection and learning that might help consumers question their needs, existing possessions, and the necessity of new acquisition. However, you do not require this for decluttering to occur. Decluttering has just become a yes or no thing, is what I was just highlighting. And these authors talk about how the KonMari method in specific is one of those tools that is actually like a good tool for facilitating declutter, because it does ask you to think critically, or at least more critically than the baseline of why you're keeping stuff and also why you're getting rid of stuff. I have been a big fan of Miss Kondo, and she has had a lot of critics online. I have Marie Kondo videos that I've made over the past couple of years. And if you want to hear my thoughts on her, I encourage you to check those videos out, because I feel like I've had such a love of her and I feel extra verified in my love after reading this article. Decluttering has become such a normalized part of life in a way that's a bit disturbing to me. We see these massive cutthroat declutterers as goals, as the thing that people want for themselves, and also something that creators mimic or they feel like is the goal or the baseline. You watch a declutter and you'll hear somebody say, this isn't a cutthroat declutter. Girl, if you ever have a cutthroat declutter, it should just be one. And any other declutter beside of that, like, why is our goal to get rid of everything when we're not planning to stop shopping how we're shopping? We see that as goals because we think that person is more decisive than us. I think that person knows themselves better, or they're willing to make the hard choices. I don't really see it as a goal because it's a bit of like how much stuff can I throw away? Like, I'm throwing away more stuff than you. Decluttering is so normal that it's become one of the main ways, if not the main way, that stuff leaves our house. In some cases, or like in some product categories, I should say, some people, including creators, or maybe more especially creators, are decluttering more stuff than they're finishing up. And it gives us an outlet to dispose of our problematic purchases. Our purchases that we bought entirely on impulse, or, when we bought our 15th cream blush or our 50th washi tape that we had no business buying. We just had to have it, or we bought something on a bad day or a hard day or like a great day. Decluttering allows us to reset the baseline whenever we want. We get to reset the board and eliminate all of those problematic purchases whenever we want. And it allows us to maintain what is ostensibly problematic behavior. Imagine just for a second that you were not allowed to declutter anything ever again. Just hypothetically. You would learn really fast, at least I think, we would change our behavior really quickly. Imagine if you were forced to keep literally everything that you've ever purchased. You would find ways to make it work, make it last, use it up, appreciate it. And I think that we would start purchasing differently. Not overnight, for sure, but we would change, I think. Donating has often become synonymous with decluttering, and what we really mean by we're decluttering is we're donating all of our stuff. And donating lets us feel better about our choice to declutter. It's a feel-good method for disposing of our stuff. I really began to see this when I imagined a scenario where, hypothetically, if I, for the rest of my life, was not able to donate anything, if I had to throw everything I didn't want in the garbage. It was a real mindset shift because it was like, I'm decluttering majority of my stuff because I am really donating it and I feel good about the act of donating. I'd personally feel icky if all my stuff had to go in the garbage, and I would probably not, like, I'd probably keep more, and I would also probably change my behavior if I didn't donate stuff. And it helps us feel less guilty or problematic about constant declutters. Last year, I decided that I was going to work towards not donating anything anymore. Selling stuff would be fair game, but I would like to eventually no longer donate things. Either use everything I have up to completion, or like sell things / give things like directly to another person. You know, sometimes even like the best intentioned person purchases, they just don't work out. And that's not what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about decluttering. One of the reasons why I made that choice is because of all of the information that's come to light over the past handful of years about what happens to our clothes once they go to the thrift stores. Very little of our clothes actually make it out onto the thrift floors. So your stuff is basically being incinerated or delivered to the global south. So let's circle back to influencers. Influencers are part of the problem. They're part of a lot of problems, to be honest. And they normalize the declutter and they also glamorize it, but they normalize and glamorize owning a lot of stuff generally. Influencers influence. I mean, I feel like I've been talking about that a lot lately. Influencers set a lot of norms, and maybe not set, but also they can be the way that attitudes, beliefs, and values become normal, or at the very least, more normal. Influencers can role model thoughtful declutterers as well as critical thinking. Influencers are part of the decluttering problem, but they're also part of the buying problem when they have a lot of sponsored ads on their channel for physical stuff, and when they are reviewing lots of products that encourages and entices people to buy stuff. It encourages people to keep up on new releases, and you're putting products on people's radars that wouldn't ordinarily be there. All of this leads to overaccumulation and owning more stuff that also requires the declutter to keep up with this pace of accumulation. Influencers regularly use the line that is such a cop-out in my opinion, and it's an opinion I've held for many years, when they say, you don't need to own this much stuff. This is my job. I own this much stuff because it's my job. And ultimately, I think it's more of a way to reassure themselves and also to like preemptively ward off criticism and also judgment. Influencers can control how much PR they're sent. They can opt out. They can choose not to get it. They have the choice, but they're not making it. I want to give an example, which is about 5 or 6 years ago, Jessica Braun, the beauty YouTuber, but she said that she was no longer going to accept PR, or is more like, I'm going to take myself off of PR lists, except for things that I actually want. And at the time, people applauded her. People were like giving her cookies, you know, like, wow, oh my God, people were treating it as revolutionary. That's not her fault. That's like the reception that people had of it. I commend her choice, and I'm glad that she did it. But the reaction from the community bothered me because people acted like this was revolutionary and gave her, as I mentioned, all the cookies, all the flowers, all the praises. But then nobody did shit. Nobody followed suit. I think from what I remember, one of the main reasons for her distancing herself from this was like all this stuff, but she also like wanted more choice over what she was buying. And I just feel like so rarely communities acknowledge the rampant overconsumption that is happening within them. I just feel like with TikTok as well becoming what it is in TikTok Shop, there's so much potential here for people to have and exert positive influence and role model positive behavior. Creators act like they have no choice but to own as much stuff as they do, therefore making the declutters a necessity. I truly believe that so many creators feel like they're backed into a corner and like they have no choice but to declutter. Girl, that's not a position you have to be in. That position is a choice. No one is making you do hauls. No one is making you do try-on videos. Nobody is making you try new releases. Nobody is making you accept PR. Nobody is making you accept sponsorships. I get that you have to make money, I get that you want to make money online, but you can also do it way more responsibly. At a baseline, there's so much we could do that's like, we're not even at bare minimum. We're like, the bar is on the floor, I feel like, with consumption. Like, could we maybe talk about thinking about whether we even need something? Do we like it? Do we want it? Maybe we could like wait a couple of days. Maybe we could just like ask ourselves a question or two. You know, like maybe we could not accept all the PR. Maybe we don't need 100 lipsticks. Like maybe. And when it comes to sponsorships and PR, if a company wants to send you the entire line, you can decline. You can say, no, I don't want to try the entire line. Like Merit Beauty, as an example, they offered creators, even as small ones like myself, back in the day, offered the whole line. And I think Lara also mentioned that they wanted her to try the whole line. You don't need to try the whole line. You don't need to try all of the lipsticks on the lipstick release. You can literally try one or two. We have choices here. Content creators are consuming in excess because they want to. This is how you are choosing to make money and have influence in the world. This is a choice. Your hands are not tied and you can change your habits at any time. You can incorporate project pans or anti-hauls. You can incorporate shop my stashes. You can incorporate using old makeup or like old products. I know of a planner who uses old sticker books as like part of roughly like a monthly kind of tradition. You can use what you have challenges. You can do anti-hauls. You can recreate stuff from Pinterest or other creators using what you already have. That kind of content is already popular. You can do it too. You don't have to own nothing or become a minimalist. This is not an either or situation. This is just having a more responsible influence, in my opinion. You can choose not to buy the 50th blush, the 110th pen, or like the 300th lipstick just for a video. You can not buy stuff just to make the video. And when it comes to decluttering, you can choose to do a lot of stuff or a lot of things with your stuff. A lot of creators will like default to giving to friends and family. Great, it's being handed off to a person, which is like ultimately preferable than like going to a donation center. But you can also give things to Project Beauty Share. You could donate things to homeless shelters and women's shelters. You could bring things to schools and to libraries and to daycares. I've personally donated books to libraries and high schools. You can also choose to not film decluttering videos. You can also choose to incorporate more critical thinking in your videos and in your declutters. There are so many options about how creators can do things better and have a more positive influence. Things that like are low-hanging fruit, things that like you don't even need to try all that hard to do. We can do it. Like we can totally do better. And this, like the declutter is a problem because it showcases the lack of critical thinking and doing things as like a yes or no, keep or toss without the critical thinking, so you can continue consuming in the habits and in the ways that you were or are consuming. People like to consume because it's fun. And so when you don't critically think about how you're decluttering things and why, then you get to continue doing it. So that's one part of the problem. But then there's the other part of how and why you consume. So it's both things. And I think we can do better in both respects. This video is kind of like, this is a problem. Later this week, I have a video that's going to be all about how to declutter more consciously, how to be a more conscious declutterer. And that video is like some suggestions on how to improve and how to learn. And so I'm not just going to leave you hanging with Like, here's the problem. No, I'm going to give you the solution. Or, sorry, I don't want to say it's the solution, but like my take on a solution. So I hope you'll stay tuned. I hope you'll subscribe to catch that video in just a couple of days. We are in the midst of Everyday May, so I hope you'll subscribe to catch more great content. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. And I hope to see you again around here soon. Tomorrow, actually. Bye.
I think there's an either